Masked Hero 100 presents Heroes Legion Year 1, Episode 1, The First Mission. Chapter 1, The Debut of Metamaster. July 20th, 2013, Los Angeles, 12 o'clock p.m. In the docks of Los Angeles, the cargo ship Demeter from Alaska stood silently docked to the cargo dock. Workers were working overtime to unload the ship's cargo, all of which were stamped with the insignia Sleet, meaning that this wasn't ordinary cargo that the workers were unloading. It was property of the secret intelligence and defense agency known as Sleet. Though most of what they did was thought to be the stuff of the tabloids and conspiracy theorist drivel in the world media, Sleet was really a real organization built separate from the U.S. government, funded and backed by the United Nations to protect the world against a threat that, like Sleet, was unknown to the world, but backed by a cabal of nameless terrorists, spies, mad scientists, corrupt businessmen and bureaucrats, and power brokers with no ties to any country or political party or goal save their own. They called themselves Fiend, the forechosen enterprise of international domination. Fiend's conception point could be traced as far back as World War II, the same war that saw the beginning of what many called the Proto-Sleet. Some spies who had come back from recon missions on Fiend forces told tales of hearing some members say that Fiend was just one out of many attempts throughout history by the leader of Fiend to secure the world for both himself and for his followers. No one had ever seen the leader of Fiend, not even the mysterious Big Four that ran the organization as its heads of power. But this information had to be exaggerated or just enemy propaganda. If it was true that the leader had been involved in events like the Egyptian Empire, Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great's ambitions to conquer the world into an empire under their own rule, the Nazi Party's rise to power, the war in Iraq, and the events of 9/11, then the leader of Fiend would have to be over 100,000 years old. That was impossible. No human being could live that long. So until proven, this information was just regarded as a wild propaganda ruse, an apocryphal bout of nonsense that Fiend used on anyone else under their Big Four's command ranks to keep everyone in line, whoever they were, the Big Four. When their involvement in 9/11 and the Iraq War was exposed and the war was over, the President of the United States and other dignitaries from the UN signed into order the secret declaration of war against the organization known as Fiend. To the public at large, this is a secret war. A war fought by Sleet forces and only by Sleet forces. But Fiend isn't Sleet's only top priority. It was also given leeway to handle terrorism both inside borders and abroad by the UN. The war on terror became global that day. So Sleet also handled all world problems. But unknown to all today, a new menace had emerged. At that very second, the metal straps holding the crates snapped off their holdings. The workers all watched askance and in shock as the crates full of Sleet cargo then floated off the ground back into the ship, carried by an unseen force. There was suddenly a loud grinding sound, and slowly but surely the ship, the Demeter, lifted out of the water and into the air until it was hovering 20 feet above the crowd of Sleet workers and soldiers. The Demeter then flew off into the air, heading to an unknown location at an incredible speed. It vanished over the horizon in almost a blink of an eye, leaving the workers and soldiers dumbfounded as they watched their ship fly off and disappear with its cargo and crew still aboard. The crew, unfortunately, didn't get off the ship before it took off into the air. One of the crew members was out on the deck when the ship took off. He hung onto the tight railing as the ship flew through the air at almost 700 miles per hour, the best he could by this point. The waves of the ocean coming and going by quickly below the ship, like lines on the highway at night 20 feet below them. The brave crewman was one of many wondering what the hell was going on, and he was the first to see what, or more appropriately, who, was the cause of the Demeter's sudden and unexplainable flight. Flying there, in the air, in front of the Demeter, was a man in some kind of armored costume. Some kind of red-colored energy that was emanating from his hands was being shot out down towards the bottom of the Demeter's hull. It was this strange energy that was what was lifting up the Demeter. Whoever this guy was levitating the Demeter, he was in charge of the crew members' fates now. Fleet HQ, the USS Damocles air carrier, 2 hours later. General Arcane, the leader of Sleet, stood in his office dumbfounded and frustrated that one of his ships could be stolen in front of hundreds of Sleet workers and soldiers. Night sea air playing tricks on the mind he could take as a factor, but could he really believe what he was being told by his men about the incident? He had just been told that the ship, the Demeter, had been stolen right out of the air, and it flew away through the air at probably 120 miles per hour, the soldier he was listening to had told him. Let me get this straight. You say it was lifted right out of the water and into the air, and you couldn't even see what did it? General Arcane asked the workers when they told him the whole story. 200 soldiers should have seen something. Yes, sir, we did. We also managed to snap a picture of the thing that stole the Demeter and its cargo. One of the workers handed Arcane a recently developed photo on a video jump drive from the security cameras in the soldier's helmet. Arcane saw the photo on the jump drive, and masking his surprise, he ordered his men to find him a ship's manifest for what was on the Demeter before it was stolen. To find out if there was anything on board that could be dangerous or made to be dangerous. When he had given the order, received salutes from his men as they went to do what they were ordered to do, he then retreated back to his cabin on board the Damocles air carrier, and placed the photo on the print scanner and digitized it into his computer desk. Computer, enhance and then refine that image, he said. The computer AI in his office desk then followed his command and enhanced the photo until it was an HD copy of its previous form, and Arcane could see the Demeter, flying 20 feet in the air under no visible power. No rockets, no jets, nothing at all. But the hull was glowing with some kind of energy that was being charged into the hull by something. This energy force was what must have been lifting up the ship. Maybe it was some kind of anti-gravity device, or maybe. General Arcane thought so. Both Sleet and Fiend had their share of breakthroughs in technology. Then he saw the floating black shadow of something floating 12 feet above the Demeter's bioplane. Computer, he said with narrow eyes. Enhance around that fuzzy image above the ship and clarify. Arcane then watched as the computer enhanced that hazy image on the picture. Then he fell back into his command chair, as everyone called it, stunned into silence by what he was now seeing in the enhanced picture. Was he seeing what he thought he was seeing? The image in the picture was now showing that it was a man, a man that was floating in the thin air above the ship bow plane and charging the ship's metal with energy coming from his own hands. From his own hands! And then levitating the ship away with the energy that was emanating from said hands. Arcane studied the picture. The energy coming from the man's gloves. It didn't appear to be fiend technology, or any other kind of technology in that matter. It looked like the mystery man was creating the field on his own, as if it were some kind of superpower or something. Superpower, he muttered in remembrance as the thought sparked a thought in the back of his brain. A little memory from a time past, not so long ago. It reminded Arcane of one of his most prominent scientists, Dr. Marcus Masters, a pioneer in genetics and genetic mutation. Before his untimely death, he had been one of Arcane's closest friends, and that was important to Arcane because he could count the friends he could rely on with only one hand, unfortunately. But Marcus was like a brother. Like a son, too. Arcane had been made the godfather to both Marcus and his little sister by their father a long time ago, one of his trusted soldiers. When either of them were too busy with running Sleet or a Sleet TechNet lab, they would have discussions about their families. Well, Marcus would anyway. Arcane's family was Sleet. His real family had died a long time ago, during a time of war. Their views on the world, Fiend, and the progress of mankind, they talked about a lot of things. Marcus's father, Vincent Masters, he was a commander in one of Arcane's Spectre soldiers units, Task Force 1254. Good man, and a good father. Although he had moments where he would be overly stern, he was the best man that Arcane could have had running that task force. When off duty, he would always visit his son in the labs and see what he was up to, if it was declassified by Arcane, that is. But before his death, Marcus had come to Arcane and asked him to bring witnesses he could trust. Out of the four was Marcus Masters' father, Albert himself. Arcane shook his head in dismay when he remembered what Marcus had showed them that day. He said he had recently discovered a newly discovered gene in the human DNA genome. A gene that had been hidden in the genetic matrix of Marcus's own DNA that he had discovered when blood test results for a routine physical came back with data results that were different from his last test results on his blood type. It read there was some kind of anomaly in his blood. But this anomaly wasn't anything that was impeding his blood flow, blood sugar, oxygen absorption in any way. So it wasn't a blood disease. And Marcus wasn't the only one in the complex who had this anomaly. Several other personnel had the same strange results from the blood tests. Intrigued, Marcus began experimenting, and through the electron microscope Arcane had given him access to find out if it was some kind of sneak attack by Fiend by way of some kind of blood poisoning virus or something, Marcus made the discovery of the gene. It was a new kind of gene that could be found not just in the bloodstream of him and the others, but also in their DNA itself. It was a new dormant DNA strand that, for some reason now, it had emerged from the maze of DNA that was the human genome. When no harmful effects were made aware or plausible, Arcane gave Marcus full access to find out what he could about this new gene. In time, Marcus managed to isolate the genetic signature of the gene and found it gave off a strange, unknown energy that worked in symbiosis with the human electrical system, but wasn't any kind of energy that was known to man, at least not yet. He developed a machine that could detect the gene's energy, and therefore any other genes like it anywhere on the planet Earth, to see if it was a genetic anomaly or not. His discovery astounded Arcane. The gene could be found now in 20% of the world's population of humans alone. How this gene had stayed hidden for so long was a question that dumbfounded Marcus. Marcus also noted to Arcane that just like his own newly discovered gene, the others were dormant, meaning they would awake or could maybe be awoken by something or some other event. Maybe by the body's energy or the functions of the brain. Marcus didn't know what the activation of this new gene would do to the human body if it was activated. Kane then gave his friend permission to explore the new gene further, to find out if the new gene could be a potential threat to mankind or a hidden gift somehow. Marcus named the gene the meta gene, meaning the next or new gene. Marcus then began experimenting with test animals. He injected samples of his blood into them, and then began trying to find ways to activate the dormant gene. After one of his exploration teams found the crystal in the Rocky Mountains of Canada, and found it was full of actual unlimited energy, Marcus revealed that he had found through this his metagene radar device, as he called it, and he found out, after finding it with the device, that the energy inside it was similar to the energy found in the metagene. After much debate and difficulty, cutting a sliver off the crystal with every known cutting tool known to man, Marcus was given what he thought would be the answer to the secret of the metagene. After comparing the two energy signatures, the metagene and the unknown crystal, and finding them to be indeed similar, Marcus theorized that the metagene was dormant because it was in a state of genetic hibernation, and all it needs is like a jump start from the same type of energy source to activate, the crystal's energy. Marcus managed to build a machine that would hopefully feed a concentrated blast of the crystal's energy, which he had dubbed M-radiation or M-rays, into the metagene directly to theoretically activate the metagene in a sample of his own blood. It worked. The crazy guy actually made it work. The irradiated blood cells in the test tubes with their metagenes were activated. They were stable, they were viable, they were safe, no foreseen harmful effects. Now Marcus tried it on his test animals, and that's where things got interesting. He brought Arcane and the witnesses in again, and he showed them the rats he had nuked with his metagene activator. They were healthy and scurrying around happily in their cages like normal rats. But then Marcus showed them that they were not normal in the least. One rat injected with the activated sample was immune to poisons and viruses, and the other one, when Marcus pointed him out in the crowd of rats in the box, had golden eyes and black fur, while another was flying. That was right. Well, floating in its cage, to be exact, weighted down by the metal weights to keep it from floating off the table. The rest of the rats didn't have the metagene, nor did they have Marcus's inactive gene injected into their blood, so they were not affected by the M radiation blast. But they died from exposure to the pure M radiation exposure then, instead. Marcus then explained to them what had happened to the three rats that had survived. The metagene caused, upon activation, a kind of genetic mutation via direct exposure to M radiation. And upon activation triggered by M exposure, the metagene begins metabolizing the M radiation that the test subjects have absorbed into their bodies when they are exposed to the M energy of the crystal by way of the activator, which fed them during this test only a 30% charge of that energy, fusing completely with the host DNA upon activation, and in return, it causes genetic change as well as certain amazing attributes never before seen in genetic mutation. Marcus had explained it to all of them. Arcane couldn't believe his eyes back then, just as he couldn't believe what he was looking at right now. He then went back to his flashback. Marcus then revealed that these labs were fed his metagene. They had no metagene before he had injected them, and the genes had been dormant before he had irradiated them with the activator. He then revealed that the injected rats' mutations reversed after 24 hours due to their natural body defenses wiping out the foreign genes that they had been injected with and returned to normal. He then went on to theorize that a person with the metagene that was activated and did not have it transferred from one one metagene bearer to another would probably not reject the gene, as it was a part of their body, and upon activation, they would get probably unnatural abilities, unknown abilities, superhuman abilities. Marcus then revealed that the rats' temporary mutations were indeed caused by the metagene activating temporarily in the rats, and every test he had run before calling in Arcane had all produced the same results, meaning those two traits were locked in his own metagene located in his DNA, meaning that the metagene's effects in various individuals were possibly random and unknown. Worried, Arcane had warned Marcus to stop the experiments, but Marcus saw it as maybe the answer to what he had been searching for, a way to heal the world, a way to fix it. He wanted to find out if he could manufacture these powers to end sickness and cancer, among many things. He argued that maybe the secret to the end of man's suffering was locked away in the metagene itself. Arcane then gave Marcus the order to find out if this gene could be activated by any other source, and then to destroy his research, because as he pointed out, he had blasted the rats with the temporary metagene with only 30% power output. What if it was at 100%? What if he couldn't control it as he thought he could? What if it exploded or that radiation leaked through or something? What kind of danger could he have unleashed onto the world if he wasn't careful? Marcus then said the energy released in an explosion wouldn't theoretically have any effect, save for a nuclear bomb-like effect on the desert area surrounding the base. He said that the gene could only be activated in concentrated M-ray doses in a small proximity. Arcane then gave his warning again, this time as a friend. He asked Marcus what would happen if his discovery on activating the dormant gene fell into the wrong hands, and after much debate, Marcus agreed, before secretly trying to do one last experiment before destroying the device and all its notes on it. He was almost close to finishing his research for the final time that fateful day 2 years ago. But when Marcus was working on his research for the new gene, the unthinkable happened. A fiend mole in the HQ tried to steal the device for testing the new gene in for Fiend, and the documents on the project in order to create super soldiers for the leader. The mole accidentally activated the untested machine and sent it up to maximum power, a setting Marcus had been afraid to set it to before. Marcus, the Fiend agent, Marcus's father and young sister, and hundreds of eight personnel were caught in the explosion of the energy that engulfed the complex and killed thousands of people in the base. The site became an M-ray hotspot for 2 years before Arcane could even send radiation material squads in to retrieve the machine from ground zero of the blast. The machine was damaged beyond repair, the documents on the project destroyed, and Marcus and the others were nowhere to be found. Arcane sadly wrote them off as being dead, vaporized by the explosion. The project to find out about the new gene had cost him his best friend and hundreds of the finest men and women he had ever known to work with. And one of his best TechNet labs was now a quarantine zone until M-rays had ceased to be in that zone of Nevada. The new Area 51, as the media had dubbed it. But on the positive side, Fiend never found out what Dr. Marcus had discovered, and for his friend's sake, Arcane hoped that it would stay that way. He had hoped that the explosion of the metagene activator hadn't turned Dr. Marcus's project into a verifiable Frankenstein's monster. Now today, however, he was presented with something he just couldn't shake off. The similarities with what he had seen in Marcus's experiments and the photo he was looking at. The emergence of a possible superhuman with actual superpowers and the photos of the armored person were that proof. Even if it looked unbelievable to a rational man like him, he couldn't help but wonder if Dr. Marcus and his research into the newly discovered gene were related to this strange case. And if it did, oh God, that explosion, that damn activator actually did something and turned the metagene on in a human. He couldn't worry about that now. That was speculation. This was reality. Someone or something just stole a sleet ship that held the newly designed slingshot portal generators and confiscated the Mega Buster missiles among a whole bunch of other artillery. Together, they were enough to lay siege to North Korea or Pakistan. Who knows what someone who knew what they were doing could do with that kind of tech. Whoever this guy that was that stole them, he obviously knew what he was doing. Now our king had to do was hope that they could find out what this new villain wanted with the ship and the cargo, not to mention the crew, and hope that they could handle these guys if his suspicions on the villain was correct. And if they were, then may God help us all.